bones and the skeletal system. There's plenty to cover, so let's jump right on in. When you start thinking about bones and what their functions are, a lot of times it comes to mind the idea of movement, of support. Now, while the bones can support your muscles and support your organs, the bones also provide attachment points for the movement. Now, the bones themselves, they can't move independently. You must have the muscles attached to bones for movement. So if there's ever questions coming up saying, can bones, as one of their really functions, movement? Well, bones by themselves, no, they can't. But bones plus muscles, most definitely. Because that leveraging, that attachment point, creates the movement of the actual systems. Protection. When you start thinking about bones, think about the rib cage, the skull. It's protecting what's underneath. The skull protects the brain. The rib cage is protecting the lungs and the heart. So you have bones that are being protective for various organs. Mineral storage. Now, this is typically thought of as calcium, but there are many different minerals that are found in the bones, not just calcium. Sure, there's calcium, but there's also phosphate. So I'll have to get into those a little later when we start talking about how the bones are made. Blood cell formation. Now, this image right here you're seeing is going to have kind of a red sphere. It's the head of the femur. You can see all the red inside. That is red bone marrow. That's where hematopoiesis is occurring, the process of making blood cells. So you have this occurring inside portions of your bones. Now, it's not going to be every bone in the adult body, but it's going to be in certain locations that are more central, more of the axial skeleton. So we have the idea of hematopoiesis, the formation of blood cells. Then we have energy storage. In the very center of this image, you're seeing there's that yellow bone marrow right in the middle. That yellow bone marrow, that is actually made up of adipose. Adipose is fat, nutrients, energy. So you actually have a little bit of energy storage inside of your bones as well. Not much, but there's some there. So how do we classify the bones? I already used the term axial. Well, axial and appendicular are the two main divisions. Axial, think central core, central axis. It's things like the skull, the vertebrae, the rib cage. It's what's right down the middle of your body. Appendicular, think appendages, your arms, your legs. All the bones in there are going to be your appendicular skeleton. So axial, appendicular. But in both the axial and appendicular, we have different classifications of the bones. Now, these classifications are based on shape. First one up is the long bone. The femur right here is a long bone. Now, pretty much long bones are any bones that are longer than they are wider. It could be the femur like that, or it could even be the little phalanges, tips of the fingers. They're still longer than they are wider. So any bone that's longer than it is wider is going to be classified as a long bone. And a lot of times these long bones are great for leverage. Your muscles will attach sometimes directly or mostly through tendons into these different bones. They can then pull across a joint to create a movement. Short bones, next category. The short bones, you can see all these bones in here. That's in the ankle, for example. They're also in your wrist. But basically, these short bones are kind of equal width and height. They're kind of almost like box-like. Now, they're not going to be exactly square by any means, but they're shorter and wider. These short bones are usually of helping out with stability while still allowing some motion. Think about your wrist. It's stable enough to help let you pick things up, but yet can still move because of all of those carpal bones inside the wrist, giving stability while still allowing for some movement. Flat bones. Flat bones, like the name sounds, they are flat and thin. Perfect example is going to be the sternum here. Sternum right in the middle. It's wider, but it's a very thin bone. It's a flat bone. So these are flat bones. A lot of times they're great for muscular attachment because they're so broad, they're wider. They allow for more points of attachment to the actual flat bone. And then we have kind of the catch-all category of irregular bones. The irregular bones are the ones that don't really fit in the other categories. One example is going to be your vertebrae. I mean, the shape of the vertebrae doesn't match any of the other categories. But you also have the coxal bones. Think the bones down in the hip. The coxal bones also fall in that. Just an unusual shape, doesn't match the other categories. A lot of times, these irregular bones can help to protect what's within. The coxal bones, the hips, are helping protect all the organs within. The vertebrae help to keep the body upright and therefore give a cavity for all your organs. And then we have the specialized category of sesamoid bone. Sesamoid bone, that's the patella, kneecap. The patella is going to be a bone that's within a tendon. So pretty much any sesamoid bones are bones that are embedded in tendons. Well, when this bone gets embedded in a tendon, then it's not just a tendon anymore. After the tendon, it's bone to bone. That's a ligament. But we'll get more of that later. The idea is these bones are in place to help prevent wear and tear of that tendon going over a joint. Think about your knee. Every time your knee bends, that tendon would run over the knee. With the actual patella is what's sliding back and forth, preventing abrasion of that tendon. So these sesamoid bones can grow in tendons where there's friction and potential for damage. And then we get kind of an odd one here called the Wormian bones. Sometimes they're called sutural bones also. But Wormian bones are going to be any bone that grows within a suture. Now, that's an extra bone. That's not typically there. We have the occipital bone there. We have the parietal bones here and here. That bone is an extra bone that grows within that suture, the joint between the occipital and parietal bones. Now, does it mean there's a problem? No, it just means that somehow that was triggered to grow when it's not typically there in most individuals. It doesn't mean it's any weaker, it can still have the same strength, just it's an extra bone that grew in that spot. Now, people get extra bones all the time. They could be Wormian bones, they could be extra of the actual patellar bones, the ones that are the sesamoid bones. So we can have extra bones or even fewer bones. Everyone's a little unique in that case. But Wormian bones, the idea of this bone that can grow within a suture. So just some classifications of bones to start with. As we keep moving into the topic of this unit, we'll get more into how these bones are being classified, how they're structurally built, and what are the different parts and pieces of individual bones.